The unique civilization of China has been strongly influenced by three traditional religions, those of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, that are sometimes referred to as the three ways. The roots of these religions date back thousands of years, and each one has played its own special role in shaping personal behavior, family life, government, art, and even scientific thought in China. Until the onset of communism in the 20th century, people were rarely persecuted for their religions. Overall, China has had such a history of religious tolerance that traditional religious beliefs have blended together to such a degree that elements from one religion are quite likely to be found in another. Confucianism, the first of the traditional Chinese religions, is based on the teachings of a philosopher named Confucius, who formulated his ideas around 500 BC. Confucius developed detailed rules for personal behavior that promoted mutual respect, generosity, honor, strong family bonds, a deep sense of personal duty to society, and even the worship of one's ancestors. Confucius believed that a superior ruler, father, husband, or older brother was naturally worthy of respect and obedience. Confucius predicted that trouble would result whenever a bad example was set. In many ways, Confucianism turned out to be much more of a system of rules for proper behavior and for good government than an actual religion. Nevertheless, the vision and ideals of Confucianism ended up uniting China, and it provided the Chinese people with a strong foundation for a stable, long-lasting society. Taoism is the second religion that played a major role in shaping Chinese thought and culture. It is a religion that offered a more relaxed and natural way of finding happiness compared to the numerous rules of Confucianism. Taoism dates back to 300 BC, but certain parts of the religion are much older. Taoism is largely based on the Book of Tao, or Tao Te Ching, that may have been written by a religious visionary named Lao Tzu. Taoists believe that everything in the universe arises from the Tao, a silent, pure, all-powerful force that existed before there was a heaven or an earth. The early Taoists thought that the best way to find true peace and happiness was to gain first-hand experience of the Tao by living in harmony with nature, leading simple lives, and by not acting in anger. When it began, simplicity was an important aspect of Taoism. But as time went by, Taoist temples filled up with ornate shrines, brilliantly colored statues, and bowls brimming over with offerings. This happened in part because over the centuries, Taoists adopted many ancient Chinese folk gods and began to worship them. Today, Taoist priests conduct public rituals during which they offer up prayers to the ancient gods or to other divinities that represent different qualities of the Tao. Taoists also believe that it is possible for humans to attain immortality, that is, to live forever, and that is why they worship a special group of gods whom they believe once lived on earth as human beings. Buddhism is the third and most recent religion to play an important role in shaping Chinese culture, and Buddhist temples and religious images abound in China. Buddhism began in India and is a religion based on the teachings of a man known as the Buddha, or Enlightened One. The Buddha taught the value of compassion, or loving kindness, as a way to overcome the striving and desire that cause human suffering. Around the year 650 AD, a religious pilgrim returned to China from India and brought the Buddhist scriptures with him. This towering temple, or pagoda, was built to house those precious books. In China, pagodas can take many different forms. Most pagodas were built in the centers of Buddhist monasteries. Monasteries are sacred places filled with temples and other buildings that are home to monks and nuns who devote their lives to religious practice. Lamas, the Buddhist monks who live in the mountainous Tibetan region of China, as well as in Mongolia, Bhutan, and Nepal, often construct distinctive pagodas like this one, called stupas. Stupas are filled with sacred offerings, holy relics, and shrines. They are often adorned with strings of rippling prayer flags that are believed to transmit prayers on the winds. And at the foot of some stupas, prayer wheels can be turned to send out prayers as well. The lamas of the Tibetan region of China follow a style of Buddhism known as Vajrayana Buddhism. The supreme spiritual leader of the Vajrayana Buddhists is known as the Dalai Lama. Although this Tibetan style of Buddhism was at first violently suppressed by the communists in an attempt to overthrow the religious government of Tibet, lamas are still deeply revered in that region, both for their religious activities and for their fascinating sacred dances and music as well. In China, one of the most popular figures from the Buddhist tradition is Mi Lo Fo, the so-called Laughing Buddha, whose image is encountered everywhere. Mi Lo Fo is very much beloved because he embodies several important Chinese ideals. For example, his fat belly symbolizes wealth. His smile and relaxed manner shows that his life is harmonious. And the tiny figures that are crawling all over him depict his deep love for children, which is one of the most basic Chinese ideals.